Hey friends, I'm going to talk today about why your knitting matters. And of course, at its most fundamental, your knitting matters because you matter. And that's it. That's all that needs to be said. As a human being, you have not only the right, but the obligation to express yourself as you feel is your natural expression. And if you feel the need is that knitting is your expression, then your knitting matters for that reason and that reason alone. If made in a more mindful way, if knitted with intention for mindfulness, knitting brings us out of the negative mind, brings us out of the troubles of the world, and helps to calm us down. Like, this is such a big deal. I'm sorry, it's just such a big deal. We live in such anxious times. It's really important to find ways to calm your mind in this world. And meditation is one of them. Practice is another one. Yoga is another one. There are so many ways, prayer, whatever it is that you find. But I think that something that you can do on a very basic, very practical way to bring your mind into focus and to calm you down is knit. The rhythm of knitting, the intention, the one-pointedness of our minds as we knit, just naturally, we can't focus on too many things at once. And this is something we keep bringing ourselves back to over and over again. We knit, we focus on what we are doing. And that is mindfulness. And so there you go. Knitting at its most basic is an expression of love. It can be self-love, it can be parental love, it can be romantic love, but it creates a material object out of a combination of fiber and intention. And often behind that intention is love. And that is an amazing, almost magical way to live in this world, that we can take two things. I mean, often I'll be like, God, I'm taking this squishy ball of yarn and putting it on two sticks and, using my hands, and a fabric is coming out the other side. It is actually magical in a way. And there is something magical about a knitted object. My knitted objects, that I made years and years ago when I was just beginning, that are terrible. There's just something in me that I cannot get rid of them. Well, it's because they have so much energy in them. They represent who I was at that time, my thoughts, my beliefs, my wishes, my deepest struggles, my anxieties, my worries, the good things that happened. It's just such a time capsule. For those of us who know it, we know it. And so it's magical, and therefore that is why knitting is amazing. Knitting is a metaphor for life itself. How we live in this world matters, and we create the lives that we have here. And knitting is literally doing that. We are sitting down with an intention, with a plan, and we are executing that plan as best we can. Like in life, it doesn't always come out like we planned. However, it comes out usually pretty good, and it's something useful and beautiful. So yeah. And if we have our bad habits in our knitting, they often play out in other aspects of our lives. If we tend to cut corners in our knitting, it shows up in other aspects of our lives if we're really honest with ourselves. And so when we correct one area of our life, it goes across the board. And so knitting is a vehicle for us to sort of tidy up our habits and to live more intentionally. The other thing about knitting that is so amazing is that when we give a knitted object to someone that we love, and they appreciate it, it can last an indefinite amount of time. I'm sentimental about my own knitted objects, not because I want to go back to that time, but because of all the energy that they hold. That's the same when we give that to somebody else. They're carrying that on their bodies. They're wearing those objects, and long after I am gone, I hope that the knitted objects that I'm making for my children will be worn for many years, and it'll be a way for them to remember me and connect with me and connect with my spirit, even though I am gone. So knitting is a gift that keeps on giving. The last reason I think that is really important about knitting in our culture today is that knitting challenges disposability culture. We live in a world where everything is disposable, and it's gotten really, really crazy. It's gotten to the point where we have Instagram posts talking about like purging toxic people from our lives. And I don't want to go off too much on a tangent with this, but I think it's really something we need to think about. Do we want to get rid of everybody in our lives because they disagree with us or because they are quote unquote toxic? I think that we need people. Getting back to knitting, everything is disposable. Clothes are disposable. Objects that we use are disposable. I just now this morning, I still have some pots from my mother when they moved and they sold their house that are from like the 1980s. They're not fancy pots. They're just pots that are functional and useful. And one broke this morning. I made oatmeal and it finally, like when I picked up the handle, it just broke. And I was like, oh my God, we got to fix it, right? Because I'm not a hoarder, but I hold onto things that have meaning, like things that are passed down to me are so precious and meaningful. Does anyone else feel that way? I love it. I love having something. I love the idea of cooking out of a pot that my mother cooked for us out of. And so yeah, so culture has gone to the extreme opposite. Everything is bought with a shortened timeline. There's nothing that's meant to be passed down anymore. And we are, as consumers, we're trained to just go out there and buy more, buy more, buy more. And there's a feeling in our world, I think, of how do we fight that? Well, we can knit our clothes. The more clothes that I knit, the less clothes that I buy. It's kind of like growing my own food or any of the things that I do that connect me more to the earth. It's like by empowering myself with knitting, I am disengaging from my role as a consumer. I'm still consuming yarn, I get it, like it's still happening, but I'm not consuming in the mindless, this yearning that is part of our culture for more and more and more. When we knit an object and we buy the yarn and we plan it out, the longer time it takes to make something, the less attached we are to it. But then it becomes something of ourselves. It becomes something different. And that's like a really beautiful alchemy. And yeah, and it takes us away from being a consumer. It makes us a creator. And that's what we are here to do. So on that note, I'm going to leave. Hope you enjoyed it. Please consider subscribing to this channel and becoming part of this community. And have a wonderful holiday weekend. Namaste.